All right. Hello and welcome to our Mass Media Talk podcast. I'm Brian Howard, or Brother Howard. Stacy Tyler is here, or Sister Tyler, whichever you prefer. We both teach mass media and society, and more an emphasis on media literacy and university. And so, Stacy, let's give everybody your background. So you have a media background. You've been teaching for a long time. Let's tell everybody about that.
I do. Professionally, my background started in television news, and I spent almost 10 years working in newsrooms. And I always say it shortened my lifespan a little bit. It's a very stressful environment, but I'm a journalist at heart, and I love storytelling. So after I did that, I've taught in higher education for for about over 10 years now. So that's something I'm really passionate about, and I also edit and have worked in social media and produced a documentary. So I have a lot of experience in different areas, I guess.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, good. Same here. I started out in television news, right? Television news, did radio back in the day, back on AM and FM radio,
Awesome.
were still things people listen to. And then been teaching for since 1999, so that's a long time. I actually started teaching adjunct before that, so I've been doing it
Oh,
for a
wow.
long time. So whether that's good or bad, it's been fun to see all the changes. The same thing, I did some documentary experience, some other things. So Stacy and I have a lot in common that way. Although she's much more youthful, which is good. It's nice to have youth and exuberance, kind of thing. So let's talk about this. So our angle on media is really a media literacy angle, which takes everything to account. So let's take this first bit as we're talking about what media literacy is. There's a couple of key terms, taking most of this from our textbook. James Potter, an authority on media literacy. And so we're going to run down some things from there. But I'll paint a scenario, Stacey, and we kind of take it from there. So I was talking to my daughter last night, and she was on YouTube on our TV. She's scrolling through YouTube, and she pulled up TV commercials from the 70s and 80s, and there's promotions from CBS for the Charlie Brown Thanksgiving special. And my wife and I were saying, oh yeah, we used to love to watch that. And my daughter's like, wait, just once a year? I said, yeah, it was on once a year on broadcast TV. There was no VCR. You couldn't record it. If it was 7 o'clock on a Monday night and you missed it, you missed it. There's no watching it. Obviously things have changed. Exposure is tremendous, and now we get exposed to so many things. Let's talk about the pros and cons of media exposure, because we have thousands of hours of YouTube, music, whatever at our fingertips. You don't have to wait till next Christmas to watch the Charlie Brown special. You can pull it up right now and binge watch it 100 times if you want. So what are the pros and cons? What do you think?
It's true. We have so many, and that's something I love that James Potter points out. We have mass media messages coming at us all the time. It's constant. And because of that, because we have so much access to everything, we've developed what he terms automatic routines. And that is just a way for our brains to weed out information that we don't think is as important, so that we don't have to process hundreds and hundreds of media messages every day that we get on the radio and on YouTube and social media and and television and film and all of the forms of mass media. So if you've ever picked up your phone to check for a message, or you find yourself scrolling and you give yourself just a couple of minutes, and then like an hour goes by and you suddenly realize that you've kind of been warped into this rabbit hole. And YouTube, I think, can do the same thing. You can start off by watching one YouTube video, and a long time later you realize that you've watched, you don't even know how many videos at that point. So but I do think that that is an important point about tuning out of certain types of media, especially when it comes to like news media or advertising and things like that, because it really can limit our experiences when we are not open to, for instance, if you only listen to CNN or only listen to Fox News, or you're just unwilling to hear different points of view and perspectives. I think that that is not what we want for media literacy,
Hmm.
certainly.
Yeah. Well, there's 2 points that I think you bring up. Some is intentional weeding out. In other words, I talked to a student yesterday who said she knew the rabbit hole that TikTok was, so she chooses intentionally not to have TikTok on her phone.
Very
The other
smart.
part is unintentional, which is what most of us do. So we have all these media habits we don't even think about. We just develop them over time. So we get up, and the first thing we do is check our phone, and we go there. It's an automatic routine, just happens every day. If we thought about it, we might say, "Oh, maybe I don't want to do that." So I think one of the goals that we have through our course is trying to get people to actually think about it. So, so then you can actually have some intentionality of it. I mean, we're still going to do things without thinking about it. Every day when I walk into school and I walk down the stairs and there's a big cork board and it's got hundreds of posters on it, and I don't even look at it. So that's an automatic routine. It's been there so long that I don't even look at it. But that's what students use a lot to try and get people to come to their societies, go to an activity. And I do see students there looking at it every once in a while. So maybe they haven't hit that level of automaticity that I have, because I don't even look at it. And I think if there's billboards as I drive down the street, I've tuned them out. I don't even look at them. I have my Sirius XM radio on my car. We're driving. We got 7 presets. There's 200, 300 channels. So
Right.
so I made the choice to eliminate those 250 channels for 7 that I listen to all the time. And of course, unfortunately for my kids, one is the 80s channel, so they have to suffer through 80s music all the time. I think
I
that's
don't think
interesting.
it's suffering. 80s music is the best. I'm with you. I would
Yeah.
definitely have an 80s channel in my car.
Point of perspective, but I think one of the things to look at is intentionality versus just letting the automatic routines go the way they are, rule our life without even thinking about it. What's your take on that, Stacey?
Absolutely. That's so important. And I think that you know, as we talk about media literacy, being able to be in control of our consumption and being able to look at information from many different perspectives and sources and analyze it and see what its potential is doing to us and to those around us. I think that's an important part of media literacy. And I was reading a book that was talking about how media doesn't come with a nutrition label, but what are we feeding our brains? When we are looking at so much mass media, and what are we consuming? How are we taking care of our brains? Just like you might look and see how much sugar is in, something that you buy from the store. Well, we consume a lot of mass media, and how are we taking care of our brains in that instance?
One thing I found to be really interesting is that no matter how far in the past we go, it seems like year over year, media consumption increases by consumers. And I think, how can that possibly be? But there's a term called multitasking. I know you feel strongly about this one. Multitasking, doing 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 things at once, but maybe it's not all it's cracked up to be. What do you think about this concept? Multitasking, watching TV, listening to music, writing a letter, whatever, all at the same time.
Doing homework, yes, I know it's and texting friends on the side. I see my own children do this, and I there have been studies done that show that, anytime that we think we're multitasking, it really takes us about 20 minutes or so to get back on track. And I read a study yesterday that was interesting. It said when we are regularly just scrolling through social media, it scatters our concentration because our prefrontal cortex is not activated. And so that can have some serious long-term effects on our memory. And it even talked about on our empathy and emotional maturity. So as we're scrolling through, that's one of the first things that you should do before you share something on social media is that, a lot of things are there to get your emotions up, to make you angry or to make you sad. And that's why people share things, because their emotions are involved. And so when we're just scrolling and we're not really paying attention to what we're doing, I think that can have a big impact on us, perhaps even spreading misinformation. And so basically multitasking it's a farce. It's not real. We can't do it. Our brains can't do it.
Well, I was thinking about this. One of the main keys that's happening now is we have so much information. We have information overload, and maybe that causes anxiety because there's no possible way, FOMO, fear of missing out, and there's no way we're going to catch up on everything. What do you think about that as far as like even from mental health, anxiety kind of thing? and maybe this is where the automatic routines come in to help us out a little bit, because we can't possibly take every bit of, imagine trying to watch everything on YouTube. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I don't think we can. In fact, I looked it up last night just to get like an updated statistic, but there are 500 hours of content being uploaded every minute on YouTube. That is like, there's no way you could watch all of that in a lifetime. I don't think the amount of content on there. And so I think that can be really overwhelming when we think about that. And fear of missing out is a big thing, especially with teenagers and young adults that, you have there's so much going on and you feel like you're always missing something. But I agree. It's so important for us to be able to take control of our and realize that one thing that I really like that our book points out is that we sometimes say that the media makes us buy things, and that's really not the case, is it? It's we have the power over mass media. We have the power to make choices for ourselves, and so that's where media literacy comes in, is being educated on, advertising tactics and different things that influencers do to get us to watch or to buy different products. And it's all about, what's going to make us successful and attractive and happy. And so once we recognize those things, it's a lot easier, I think, to make better decisions that are going to hopefully help our mental health in a positive way.
Mm. Yeah, and some of those habits are kind of hard to break too, as well. So some of the social media habits as well. Kind of like, if you're addicted to smoking, it's easy to say I'm going to quit, but you got to get some help, right? Usually, you need some help. Very few people go cold turkey, like trying to quit scrolling through your phone cold turkey. Most people
So
don't know
true.
what to do with their hand. They're sitting there and like, what do I do? You got to scroll your fingers or something like that. But, you know.
So true. And there's been a whole lot of research done too on how that has impacted our relationships with people. People don't just talk to strangers anymore. We feel awkward being in situations where we don't have anything to say. And so immediately people go to their phones. And that's what you see, in restaurants and, on public transit, anywhere that there's, a lull or people are in uncomfortable places, that's the first thing they do is pull up in their phone so they don't have to make eye contact or talk to anyone either.
All right. Well, we're getting about where we're going to run out of people's attention span because they can't scroll through this. But one thing coming up in our classes, we're going to have people do a media journal, and I think one of the most important things is in this media literacy is actually understanding where we're consuming. So, a project to analyze what actually am I doing? Am I meeting my needs? Am I being used, or am I using the media? What's been your take? This is a hard thing to do, and it's also somewhat almost like sometimes embarrassing to look at media consumption. What's been process been for you, and what have you seen as you've read people's summaries on their media journals?
That's a great question. I think always, every semester, and I've done this in every teaching position I've had, and it's for most students, it's very eye-opening. They're shocked at how much they use it. They think that they are not using it very much, but when they sit down to analyze it, they're using maybe 5 to 10 times more than they think they are. So I think it's a really valuable project, and I love that James Potter suggests doing that every single year, doing a media journal of yourself just to keep track of I mean, we think that we're doing such a good job, and then when you actually sit down to analyze it, you realize, maybe you're not doing as
Yeah,
great of a job as you
yeah,
think.
yeah. And it's not to make us feel bad. Just like keeping track of your spending isn't to make you feel bad. It's like if we just bury our head in the sand, then we're broke all the time, or bankrupt. So just a better understanding. I think that's our whole goal. Stacy, you got the final word. Anything you'd add that we haven't talked about today that you want to share?
I think just socialization, I maybe take a look at that term as well, just considering the influence of people that maybe you grew up with, your parents, leaders, politicians, influencers on social media. How have they influenced the decisions that you make in your life, whether it's the news media that you consume or what you decide to purchase and buy, different brands, etc. And I think taking a good look at why you're buying or doing the things that you're doing can help you decide if it's really in your best interest.
Sure. Why do you think Nike is the best brand? For example, with my daughter yesterday, we had to buy Nike. It wasn't Adidas was not going to cut it. Had to be Nike kind of thing. But there is this thing, and I would wrap up on this one. We mentioned a lot. We're influenced by friends and family. Probably more so. We say, yeah, my friends. I ask my friends when I want to, buy something or do something. But there's this theory. It's really simple. Two-step flow theory, which means most of us have learned most of the stuff we know not from friends and family, but from they learned it from media sources, books, TV, movies, and then we go to them, and where did they get the information from originally? Well, they got it from a media source. So even though it's coming, Stacy, you're telling me great information, chances are that you didn't just come out of the sky with manna. You learned it some other way. So media is probably a little bit more powerful than we give it credit for, because a lot of the information, comes from media. And then even if we get it from a friend, it probably came from a media source to begin with. So something to pay attention to as we form why we think the way we do, and why we think Nike is so great, right? or whatever happens to be.
Or whatever brand. Yes, I agree. That's a great point, Brian.
Okay.
Thanks for bringing that up.
Cool. Well, thank you. Well, that's our first edition of our Mass Media Talk podcast. We'll take this on. Hopefully we can do this every week and kind of give some overview of some of the topics we're talking about in class, give some insights, and have some fun talking about it. So, hey, great talking with you. Let's do it again.
You too, Brian. Thank you.
All right.